Yahoo folks, it's Kim here. It's Friday, and if you know automobiles, you'll know you're looking at two air conditioning compressors for an automotive application. Obviously one's brand new. See it? Here's the pulley that the belt runs on. This is the clutch plate that turns the shaft with the compressor. Here's the one I'm changing. Pulley turns just fine, but something's gone. What could it be? Further examination, when inspecting to make sure that the compressors were a match. Dun dun dun! What is this? Yahoo boys. Shaft's broken off. Clutch plate is on a freeway somewhere 6 years ago, because I was in New York during the hurricane doing a recovery, and when that thing broke, my son was driving it. So all these years later, we're trying to get it working again. But the best part so far, I'll try and do this. Wait a minute, there's got to be a way. All right, there it is. The best part is I'm inspecting this, and usually an air conditioning failure is a long, slow process of metal to metal contact in the piston area, or with a wave plate that runs the pistons back and forth, and you end up with a lot of metal, and it eats up aluminum and steel, and you see all this metal go through the system, and metal is a bad thing in an air conditioning. But all of the discharge hoses I've looked at so far are like pristine clean, so I'm gonna have to rinse it out and check it. But I have a kit with everything, so mostly it's gonna get replaced anyway, but I don't know how bad it was. Talk to you later. Back at it. I'm fixing the air conditioner on my son's 2000 Honda CRV limited edition. It's one of my favorite cars ever. I love that car. And my daughter got married, and she gave it to her husband. I love him too. So I'm fixing his air conditioner. Anyhow, here's a little trick. I'll get closer to show you. If you're a car working guy, you know about it. But hang loose, it's a shortcut. Continuous. I'm gonna zoom this in so you can see. So I got to get a condenser out, right? And this particular condenser has a little oil cooler somebody put on there to make a towing package before I ever got it. And it's got those stupid little plastic anchors that go through a coil, and it's just like grabbing it. So I got to release that to get the condenser out. Well, you got to go down in here, and it's kind of hard to hold these apart. And I get a little stop chock for an RV from like Walmart, and you set it in there, and you just kind of lean on the radiator and see how much play it's got. I drop that chock in there. Now I can get in here and unscrew or unbolt or whatever. Looks like they're coming right off. It's got like a, nah, ain't coming off. It's got like a beaded plastic strip that goes through there, and it's got an anchor. You ratchet it down and then cut it off. I gotta cut them off. But at least I can get in there without poking holes in the radiator. Okay. So I've gone in, I got everything that's hooked to it off. I undid the lines. Hondas are really sweet because the bolts, you can hit them from the front. And the lines, and they're the kind of line that has a circular aluminum boss that slides down into a bore, and in that bore there's an O-ring on the hose itself, so you don't pry them out. You wiggle them and finesse them out, and then they're fine. If you force them out, you're liable to screw them up. So anyway, once you get it on, you get the bracket off the top, which by the way comes off. You just got to reach in there very delicately, get it up where you can get a hold of it. And since it's the right, thin enough, comes out, and on the bottom is where the hoses hook. So when you get one side up, you just push back on the radiator and find it. There it is. In the case of the condenser, let me move this so you can look at me. So, subject to condensers, this one's like 95 bucks for a condenser. I'll buy 20 or 30 bucks worth of flush and spend a bunch of time flushing it back and forth and working it, and it still might get it really clean. That thing had a catastrophic, something flew apart. I haven't found any dirt in the lines yet, which is good. The lines are nice and clean, but that means they're all in there. So it gets a new condenser. It's cheap. Saves money in the long run. Hey, peeps. Let's see if we can get a good look at this. And I'll narrate it for you. What you're looking at is the low pressure side of the condenser. It's the big one. Well, that doesn't mean it's really low. This is the discharge from the compressor. Compressor makes a high pressure, high temperature gas that goes into the condenser through this hole. Goes down through these tubes, cools down. Come on now, having a hell of a time with this phone. So it cools down as it goes across and turns into a high pressure, high temperature liquid. So this is the liquid line right here, where it's coming out after being cooled off. I don't think you can see too good. Let's see. But it's not clean by any means. And if you see it, there's some like a little darkness. That's usually indicative of corrosion. Okay, so here's this condenser that I got. Oh yeah, as you can see, this one's going into the top. That's the low, the discharge side. It's low pressure or high pressure, high temperature gas. Liquid line's always at the bottom, and they go towards the front. So that's reverse the procedure. This one, I like to try and leave the little plugs intact, because I'm not done with it yet. I want to keep it sealed. So you're just real careful, you know. If I come over here, just work your way down in there. And down in the bottom, there's a couple holes in the frame member that those rubber bushings sit in. Let's locate them. See what I got down here is a hose in the way, huh? There it is. Just like that. Welcome back, peeps. Papa's Fix-A-Chop, where Papa's actually fixing a car, which is what I did for most of my life, and not doing other stuff. I don't know if you can see that. Hard to tell. When you get a compressor, I always get OEM ones, either by the factory or that's a direct fit and an exact match. And I don't mess around with rebuilt, not on air conditioner. Anyway, first thing I do is I take off the suction hose and I drain all the oil out, as much as I can get out. And then I'm going to put a new charge in there, like 8 ounces, 7 ounces. And that's the one thing, if you ever do air conditioning, you're trying to learn, or you're doing it and you can't figure it out, which that's how we learn. The most common problem with them that seem to hold a charge and run, but they just don't get as cold as they're supposed to, is usually too much oil in there. If you keep adding oil or putting like dye to find leaks and it's in there, if you have never actually flushed every single fitting and line and coil completely clean and dry, you don't know how much oil's in there. And if you have too much, it can hurt it, but more often it just decreases the efficiency. Makes it not get as cold as you think it should. So an air conditioner has had a lot of repairs done and seems to be tight and not losing gas and cycling normally, but doesn't get as cold as it's supposed to be. Evaluate whether it might have too much lubricant, because it's an inert material that doesn't help with the refrigeration process. Just a tip. Well, okay guys, I'm going to talk a bit about the actual mechanics of doing this. Air conditioning repairs are one of the most advanced of automotive repairs. And like everything, if you don't really have some experience taking stuff apart and working on it, you really shouldn't be doing it. That being said, you see pictures, like here the battery's missing. I had to take it all out to get to these lines, because the main important part of fixing an AC is make sure it's clean. So you have to flush these lines out with an improved solvent to clean all the debris, the oil, everything out, and blow it all out and make sure it's clean and dry. And again, like under the dash, you got to do this. You got to take it apart and put it together, and it's really complicated. And that's why you have to have a license to do AC repairs. So yeah, you can do it at your own at home, but you can't take the Freon out or put it back in legally unless you're certified to handle it. So, I'd advise you to either get a training at a college or something to do it, figure out how to do it. But other than that, you can save a lot of money. So I don't blame people for doing their own repairs. Like here you see a little brass valve that has to be put inside the air handler that's under the dash. Good morning. Kim here, Papa's Fix-It Shop. This is just where I catch little tidbits. The hope is that somebody will look at this video or the series of videos and learn some stuff that I learned over a long, decades of working. And it's with hoses. The first thing I'll show you, I always store hoses that are not used all the time plugged into each other. Here's another one. So I took these are ones that I keep around in case I got to get a hose way out somewhere. And 99% of the time they're just stored. Here's the thing. In this part of the Sonora Desert, along the Colorado River, it's called Riverine Sonora Desert. It's beautiful all winter. Summer it's really hot. But there's a type of bee that lives here, a wasp or bee, that cuts little circles out of like bougainvillea flowers or different plants. But if there's bougainvillea around, these things are all over. So there's a lot of that in this place. And if they find they look for a little hole that another animal is bored in a tree, and they go down in there and they pack all these little bits of flower petals that they cut into discs around their eggs, and that's how they propagate. The thing is, get this guy up here. Well, actually, this is, you know, everybody's seen this. It's got a hole here where the air goes in there. In this case, there's a little valve right here, so they can't go very far. But if you imagine I was on the end of a hose, there's going to be 25 feet of open space to lay eggs. So if you have an air hose or a brake line on a car you're working on, or an air conditioning line on a car you're working on, and it's been a few days and it's springtime, you increase the likelihood of them guys going down in there and laying eggs. The problem is, let's say it's a brake line on your project car. You had it in your yard for 4 years and you work on it on Sundays, and you get all the brake lines fitted, and maybe you tape some masking tape or something on the open ends, maybe you didn't. But if it's not sealed really good, it'll, you know, plastic bags get holes in them or whatever. These little bees will get up in there and they'll go up in that line and lay 3/4 inch long packings of bits of vegetable or plant material, and the eggs grow up in there, the larvae come out the end, and they fly away and they leave the house in there. And over enough time, you can get a good 12 inches of those little nests in there. So if you go to hook it up again later, it doesn't work. So I'm doing hose maintenance because I had to take all the hoses out and work on air conditioner on a Honda. Belongs to my son-in-law. And the last thing I do after I put my hoses away is I hang them up so they drain all the oil and everything out and off gas, and then I put them away just to keep them clean. But I keep them in a box where the little bees can't get to it. Everybody's got problems with bees of one kind or another. See the little round holes? Those are from the leaf cutter wasps, bees, whatever. They cut these little circles out and they stick them in a hole somewhere with their eggs.